This is where the cool podcast intro is supposed to go, but I forgot to finish it. Anyway, here's Scuffed as Fuck. What is up, everybody? Nope, I got that immediately wrong. um, What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scuffed as Fuck podcast, the only place where everyone's here, but none of them showed up on time. I'm your host, unlocked by complete accident, aka Retro Coda, and with me today is friend of the show and the whole reason this thing is even existing at this point, TheCubicGuru. Welcome in, Cubic. Go ahead and tell people a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Hello. Yeah, my name is TheCubicGuru. I am an artist and a variety streamer on Twitch. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I know we're about to talk about Nintendo, and that holds a special place in my heart.
Love to hear it. I am absolutely my face hurts from how much I'm smiling because of this. I think we talked a little bit about it before we actually started this recording. I genuinely love you to death. I'm gonna put that out there.
Thank
you. So you are, as you said, a variety streamer, and one of the things that you do like to do is you play Nintendo games on stream. A lot of I've seen The Legend of Zelda, and the other day you were playing some Kirby Air Ride, which is kind of what got this whole thing started. What is the first Nintendo console that you ever owned?
The first one I owned myself was a Nintendo GameCube. So that's probably why you saw the Legend of Zelda game I played was Wind Waker, and Kirby Air Ride, of course, is a GameCube game. But that was one where I remember, I believe it was for my birthday. I got a GameCube and it was bundled with Mario Sunshine, and that really just sparked the love. I played Nintendo games before that because my mom owned some of the older consoles,
Right.
but it just kind of built up from there, and I loved it ever since.
See, one of my first consoles I think I ever had was the PlayStation 1. My stepdad was a very big gamer. Actually, one of the first games I remember playing growing up was this Winnie the Pooh, learning for preschoolers kind of game. So it had these little, genuinely, and not fucking with you at all, it had these different little mini games to it. Like one was popping balloons and learning how to count. Another one I believe was like a painting kind of mini game and stuff, but it was really cool, and that's kind of where I got all started with my stuff. But I did own some Nintendo consoles. I know I did say that, I was kind of sheltered when it came to that stuff growing up, but
right.
I think the first Nintendo console I remember owning was a Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
My mom had gotten it for me when I was probably like 5 or 6, and one of my first games I remember playing on it was Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green.
It's a classic. I love that. Well, Coda, when we talked before, you did mention that you were a PlayStation kid, but did you know that the PlayStation happened because Nintendo and Sony had a fight?
Really?
Yeah, so back in like the late 1980s, they were trying to make a CD add-on for the Super Nintendo, which I think it was their Nintendo's second console. And they were putting all the infrastructure in place, and they were doing all this research and development, and it was even codenamed the PlayStation, and it was going to be like this latest and greatest thing that would revolutionize. But there was tension rising on Nintendo's side because they didn't like that in their contract Sony was going to have too much ownership and control over like finances and stuff with the CD-ROM format. So out of the blue, publicly, Nintendo's like, "Hey, we want to announce our partnership with Philips," and they were going to make a new console, which at the time Philips was Sony's biggest rival because it was they did a lot of like TVs and like DVD player or VHS players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So they so Philips and Nintendo made what's called the CDI, which was probably the one of the biggest flopping consoles ever.
I was
And
gonna say
Sony
I've never
was
heard of it, so
oh yeah, but Sony felt so betrayed that they took that CD technology and they developed their own console, which we now know as the PlayStation.
that's actually that's wild to me.
Yeah.
I So the only reason PlayStation exists is because they got salty that Nintendo didn't want to work with them.
Pretty
Is what
much,
you're telling
yeah.
me?
Pretty much.
That's wild.
It's
Um
just a wild story.
yeah, there's the I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, and I've been really meaning to. I think it's an Apple exclusive movie where they talk about the original Game Boy or Tetris or whatever.
Okay.
And it has the dude from hold on, this is the first time we're gonna actually research stuff real quick. Um, love it. We're getting into it early.
Yeah.
So it has the dude from the Kingsman, the dude who plays Eggsy, I think it is.
Okay.
Tetris movie.
I don't think I've ever seen Kingsman.
Kingsman is a phenomenal film. I definitely recommend watching it. It's Bond, but it's very funny. Um, let's see, who is this guy? I'm gonna butcher his name. Taron Egerton. Um,
Okay.
he plays the role of a man named Hank Rogers. It's based on true events around the race to license and patent the video game Tetris from Russia. They actually show him going to Japan and getting to see it on the actual original like Game Boy, the big old block. Fantastic film. Have you ever had, or from what I've seen, it's a fantastic film, I should say. Have you ever had like any of the consoles or handhelds besides like some of the newer ones? Like, were you ever a kid that got to experience the big gray block that was the original Game Boy?
I didn't, but my mom did, and she kind of had that around as I was growing up. Um,
Yeah.
but the first one I owned, like you, was the Game Boy Advance, and I had a it was a gray SP that would flip up, and I would play let's see what I had a bunch of different games for that. The first Mario and Luigi game, Superstar Saga, that one was
Mhm.
really fun. I played a lot of that.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
the Mario Advance series, so they like remade a bunch of NES and Super Nintendo Mario games on the Game Boy Advance, and they had voice lines and better graphics, and it was so fun.
See, I don't remember a lot of the game. Actually, as you were talking about this, I was pulling out. I still have it in a bag. I've carried it with me all these years. I have my gray Game Boy Advance SP and
Let's go.
a a see-through like whenever. Do you remember how everything was see-through in the early like 2000s? Like
That was the
everything
future,
from like
Coda.
yeah, it was the future, man. It definitely didn't go out of trend like years later. Um I still have my old see-through like crystal Game Boy Advance. I used to have a purple one, but that one kind of got lost in the move, and I still have all of my games. They're all sitting in this bag right here. Let me actually pull a couple of them out because this is fantastic. We get to talk about some of these.
Yeah,
So
please do.
one of my favorite ones that I had, and I still have both, are the Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2, the six golden coins.
Love them.
Fantastic games. Now some of the IPs that we never really I never really got to experience. And I hope you can shine a light for me on some of them are Kirby. Um, never got to play those, which was a shame because the more I see the games themselves, the more I'm like, I missed out on a core childhood memory. Um, as well as like Star Fox. That one was one where like seeing you play the characters on Smash the other day, I was like, who? Who who is this Fox McCloud and why does he have like the Dragon Ball Z like level gauge over his eye? Like
I love
um
it.
I'm trying to think of any others. Like um those are the two off the top of my head that I can think of. So like um what was life like growing up with Nintendo? That's
I feel
that's a
like,
weird way of questioning it, but you know.
yeah, I don't know. It feels like, as an adult now, it feels like it was such a different world back then. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
think Nintendo helped form that. Um, Funny enough, my introduction to a lot of those characters was from Smash. So like I had Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube, and I would see some of these characters, and I'm like, what are they from? That's so cool. Because I thought, as a kid, when you have a game, you just think that they're mutually exclusive to that game.
They're from
I
that
didn't,
game, yeah.
yeah, I didn't know it was a big rally of Nintendo characters fighting each other. But then, like, as I grew up, and you can see at their trophies whenever you go through the gallery what games they're
Mhm.
from. So sort of be like, okay, okay. And of course, I knew Mario was from another game because I played other Mario games.
Right.
But so Kirby, my first Kirby game was Kirby's Dreamland on either Kirby's Dreamland or Kirby's Adventure. I can't remember what the specific title was, but it was on the original Game Boy. My mom had it, and it was just,
Mhm.
a fun little platforming jaunt. You suck in enemies, you shoot them back out. Um, my again, back to GameCube, Kirby Air Ride was my first Kirby game, which is like a complete 180 from what the normal formula of Kirby is.
I was gonna
It's
say, from what I've seen of Kirby, like, Kirby Air Ride looks like a complete departure of form.
yeah, yeah, and some of the core mechanics are still there. I mean, when you suck in an enemy, you gain its ability, but yeah, the whole more or less it was a battle royale with one of its modes, City Trial, which you probably saw me play.
Yes,
Um,
it did.
but the whole vehicle basis was never a thing.
Right. What is so there might be some people out there that have never seen this game. I know that, as we get older, being 27 almost, um, a lot of the people that might end up listening to this are probably going to be younger people who have never experienced these things, which is, we're not even going to pause at that because that's a crazy thing for me to even think about of like, because they start to sound more and more like my parents every day of like, oh, back in my day, we used to have this. And like, there are people that I work with who are like, huh? And it hurts my soul every time. But like, explain Kirby Air Ride just a little bit for anyone who might not know what that is.
Yeah, Coda, I feel you because I'm 26 and I have a similar outlook on all that. But yeah, Kirby Air Ride was a Kirby racing game where you had a big selection of vehicles and these really awesome Kirby themed tracks that you could race on. But
Hmm.
where that game shined was a mode called City Trial, and you're dropped in this city map where you can go around and collect different items to improve your vehicle to then face off at an event whenever the time runs out. So it was super addicting, super fun. If you were like me and you would like have your cousins over or have like friends over to play, you could just pick it up and play it easily. It was so fun.
And like, that was, I mean, I don't want to speak incorrectly on it, but like, that was probably one of the first Battle Royale esque games before Battle Royales kind of took off, would you say?
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, you're literally dropped in with the worst vehicle, no stats, and you pick up and find things during that allotted time to then face off against each other, which is pretty much the formula today for a lot of games.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think about how like a lot of those games are kind of the stepping stones to what we have now.
Yeah.
Um it being kind of a departure from form, as I was saying, is kind of in line with a lot of the games from that time period, wouldn't you say? Like, we all kind of started with a very similar esque uh way of how they created games and kind of the themes and all that stuff. And then I feel like it was at some point in those Like when did that game come out? If you could ballpark, or if you want to pull that
Um,
up real quick.
yeah, GameCube era was like 2002 to
2008.
2008. Yeah.
2002 to 2008. So it was like
Yeah.
in that mid 2000 to 2010 range where everything was kind of switching up. Like I know one of my all-time favorites growing up was always the Spyro trilogy and the
Mm.
Crash Bandicoot trilogy. And Spyro, I remember very vividly playing the originals on the PlayStation 1, and then it was sometime around the PlayStation 2 era where I would say roughly that 2006, 2008 period. Um, they started flipping the script and everything was coming out kind of edgy away from its original form. Like the first Spyro remake that they had done completely removed the cutesiness of the original Spyros and then made it kind of like this dark, a darker story. The colors were a little bit more muted and stuff. Um, and Kirby Air Ride didn't necessarily have that big of a drastic change, but to go from a side scroller where you're just sucking up enemies and gaining their powers from what I've seen
Mm-hmm.
to suddenly driving around on like a little star and collecting parts, a very different kind of uh turn in types of gameplay, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one thing, and some people may disagree with this because I think lately Nintendo's been a little bit more experimental, but in the GameCube era, that's when they were really just switching gears with things and really experimenting with the formula of different games. I mean, that was a time when they added full voice acting to Super Mario. I mean, Sunshine had these weird voice lines that I loved, but a lot of people were like, "What? That's so weird." Um, Luigi's Mansion. I mean, you were it was a slow paced walk through a mansion, sucking up ghosts. You know, that was never. You went from jumping alongside Mario to you're you're a much slower plumber than you used to be. You know what I mean? It was all
Right,
different.
right. Like, and that was, I again, not me not knowing a whole lot. That was one of that was one of Luigi's like first, if not the first solo game that he had, right? Because like it was always Mario had his mainline series. Like I remember in my early, like late teens, early 20s, picking up a Nintendo 64 for the first time and getting Mario 64. And I absolutely love that game. That's one of my top Nintendo games of all time. But like it was always Mario and Luigi, or it was just Mario. Luigi had never really had his own personal outing until Luigi's Mansion, right?
Yeah. So funny enough, I think that's the one everybody remembers. But Luigi actually starred in a educational game back in the early '90s.
Edu-
Ye-
educational
Yeah.
game?
Oh yeah, there was a game called Mario is Missing, and it was a game where you played as Luigi going around to different parts of the world. I don't remember what you had to collect, but it was in an effort to save Mario because he was kidnapped. It did not do very well, as you can imagine. Um, but that was his first starring role.
That's actually kind of crazy because like I feel like I have, the more we talk about it, the more I feel like I have minor memories of it. There was one that was based on like numbers, right? And then the other one was learning the alphabet or something like that.
Yes. Oh yes, there was a
Okay.
preschool game for kids.
Okay, so I do vaguely, wow. Wow. So you're right though, like no one ever remembers those games.
No.
It's that's crazy. Wow, you blow my mind here.
I know.
Unlocking
There's all
memories
kinds
that
of
I
like
didn't remember.
little bits from Nintendo's history that is just kind of like it blows your mind a little bit. Like
Yeah,
did you know before Nintendo made video games, they were a trading card company?
we're talking like Pokemon, the Pocket Monsters, right?
Kind of. It was more like traditional playing cards.
Really?
Yeah, so which funny like I'm sure you know this, but Japan has a pretty strict law around gambling. especially back then.
Mm-hmm.
So they made what was called Hanafuda cards, and it's what you would it's like bicycle playing cards almost.
Okay.
Um, but they really took off. This is way back in 18 like the 1890s. It went that far
Um,
back in history.
as you're
But
talking about this, I'm gonna Google it.
yeah, yeah. But what gave them a little bit more traction is they expanded to the West a little bit and partnered with Disney to make cards, and that gave them like a financial foundation to start doing other industries.
Oh, this is so cool looking at all of these. Okay, that's
Yeah,
actually really cool. Holy
I
cow.
love it.
I'll uh I'll I'll take a screen grab of some of these and I'll post them on Blue Sky with a picture of the games that I have sitting over here. We'll do that because I'm realizing now that some of the stuff that we talk about is going to require that, visual guide in a way.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but that's cool. What would you say, not to immediately switch topics, but what would you say is probably your all-time favorite Nintendo game? Because I know I mentioned Mario 64 being one of mine, and I do have a couple of others solely for nostalgia purposes. But like, I'm curious. I know that you have said before that Kirby Air Ride being like one of your all-times, considering that's one of the first games that you had for Kirby. But like, what would you say is your top three?
Ooh, top three. Well, funny enough, Mario 64 is probably my all-time favorite game ever. I've played that game probably like several
It's
dozen
such a
times at
good
this point.
game.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's become as I stream, it's become a bit of a staple. Like I'll go through a bunch of different ROM hacks because the scene around that right now is huge.
Oh yeah.
Um, but so that's number one. Let me think about that.
I remember spending so much time like searching for that 121st star and I remember before I even owned a Nintendo 64, I remember in middle school and elementary school, kids would always talk about having one, and you'd always hear in the lunchroom or in the hallways, like, "Oh yeah, if you get up on the top of the castle, like you can find Yoshi in the back and all this other stuff." And it was always crazy back in those times. God, I sound old saying that, but it's crazy looking at how like things have changed in that sense of like, anything that you want to find now, you just look online. And that was one of the first times I ever had an experience of like, you couldn't look this stuff up necessarily. You could, but like, a lot of times it was just kind of word of mouth, like, oh, there's a 121st star. Like, it's really hard to get. That's insane. And then whenever I first got my 64, like playing through the whole game and going to the back and going, son of a bitch, they all lied to me.
It's so funny because I fell into the same trap whenever they did the DS remake of that game. Because even then we had you had the internet and you can look stuff up, but
Mhm.
in a similar fashion, people would make fake videos on how to unlock stuff, and I would fall
Right.
for it.
The early years of the internet. Internet having
Yeah.
been probably 20 years old at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, top 3, are we talking specifically Nintendo or just in general?
Yeah, let's go specifically at Nintendo, and then we can branch out to other ones because I do have a
Okay.
very different list.
Okay, I think I do too. So Mario 64, Smash Ultimate has to be up there. I've put so many hours into that game with my friends.
Never played a second of it.
Oh, Coda.
Listen, there's a lot of stuff that I missed out on.
Well, maybe it's my job to expand the horizons for you a little bit.
That's what you're here for this episode is to expand my
I guess that's
horizons.
true. Um, Probably number 3 is Banjo-Kazooie.
Okay. That's a very solid list because honestly, Banjo-Kazooie is a really good game. I never got to play it on Nintendo. I played it through the Xbox Live Arcade whenever
Oh,
I first
yeah.
got my Xbox One.
Okay.
Um
I was kinda
so
hoping you played it being a bear and all, but, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very, very different. Our my pathway through Nintendo games is very different than a lot of other people's, considering I started off with Sony and stuff.
Hmm.
I would say my top three, though. Um, my top three. Number one, of course, Mario 64. I 100% agree with you there because
Hmm.
that was the first time that I ever was like, I need to collect everything. I really like, I dug deep into it for that game. Horrible swimming and all. Like, I loved that game so much. I put countless, countless hours into it. And I still have, honestly, it's one of the things it brought with me. So, I don't get to talk about this a lot. I'm a very big collector of retro stuff, hence the name Retro Coda. But I have I have an old Nintendo 64. I still have all of my um game cartridges from my Game Boy Advance. And I have been working with one of my friends towards getting myself a GameCube so that way I can actually have these physical pieces of history, because it's always cool to me because as we're expanding further and further into the digital horizon where everything is now just a download and there's no longer the satisfaction of popping a disc into a console, unless you're wanting to pay the extra money to get one of those kinds of consoles.
Hmm.
Like, it's becoming a dying art in a way, and so it's nice to have that little piece of history.
Yeah, totally. I didn't know you were a collector. That because I am also a collector. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to show you some of the stuff. I'll have to show you pictures of it because I'm not letting you into my apartment whenever you come over to visit because it's no offense to you, it's all offense to me. It is a fucking pigsty in here. I really need to clean this place up. So we'll
No, I
have
gotcha.
coffee when you come by, and that's as far as it goes.
Hey, I'm here for it.
um, but yeah, so number one will always be Mario 64. Number two, I'll let you decide if it's okay because they're the same game in a sense.
Mhm.
Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Ooh,
Those
okay.
were the first Game Boy Advance games my mom actually got me when she got me the purple Game Boy Advance. It came with the double copy of the cartridge Fire Red and the cartridge Leaf Green. The actual box showed like both Charizard
Right.
and yeah, and it came with a link cable as well, so that way you could play with friends. But I had no friends. That's why I
Oh
was a
god.
Sony kid. Like my mom raised me on PlayStation so that I wouldn't have to have other people come over. We had one controller and that was it.
That's
Um,
valid.
and my last one, which is controversial to a lot of people because a lot of people hated it, as I'm growing older and realizing, Mario Kart Wii.
People hate that one?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of people hate on it because of the motion control specifically.
Oh, that sucks.
Right. Like, it was honestly it was so that was the only Mario Kart that I've ever played, and that was the first time that I got to experience um the world expanded besides a side-scrolling Mario and all the characters
Yeah.
involved in that. But like, yeah, my stepdad was a very big gamer. He had the Nintendo Wii and he ended up giving us his older one when he bought a new one so that he could play games with his cousin. And so the only three games that we had for it that I could think of off the top of my head were Wipeout.
Okay.
We had Mario Kart Wii, which was his copy, but he would let us play. We just couldn't touch his save because he managed to get every single gold uh, cup plus all the time trials and stuff. He
Okay.
he is a legend when it comes to the gaming world for me because I kind of take a lot of my love for racing games and all that stuff from him. But yeah, he had all the characters unlocked and everything. And then the third one off the top of my head, man, I don't even know if there was a third game. I think it was literally just those two now that I'm thinking about it. And I would constantly download like WiiWare demos of like, they had like a gunslinger one and They
Mhm.
had the browser where you could go online, and I would look up like games that you could play on a Wii through the browser, so I could do the light gun ones like Duck Hunt and stuff like that. Like
That's
that was
cool.
my childhood. Yeah.
You, have Wii Sports?
Wii Sports, that was the one. We had Wii
Okay.
Sports. Yeah, we had a nunchuck specifically for Wii Sports because I remember I broke one of our it wasn't one of our TVs, it was one of my uncle and aunt's TVs.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I was a young kid and we were playing uh I don't know if I fully broke the TV or if I had just, scared them to the point where they didn't want us touching it anymore. But you know how it came with the crappy wrist strap and everyone hated wearing those because,
Of course.
we're kids. Fuck safety.
Yeah.
Um but so I was playing it with one of my friends over at their place and we were playing bowling and I guess I got a little too into it and I ended up yeeting the remote straight into the TV
Oh,
and
no.
yeah, it did not go well, but yeah, we had the nunchuck at home so we could do the boxing, and I remember putting a lot of time into boxing thinking, "I'm gonna be the next pro fighter," and yeah, I gave up on that dream real quick.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's such a shame.
Yeah, that's my experience with Nintendo is very far and few. I had, like I said, the original Game Boy Advance. We had the Wii with those 3 games, and really, it wasn't until I got into my, like, late teens, early 20s that I started actually getting my own stuff. Like, I had a Switch for a few years during the pandemic, which unfortunately got stolen while I was over at my
Oh.
parents' place for Thanksgiving. Someone actually broke in through the window of my apartment. It was on the ground floor, and they took surprisingly, it was the only thing they took because it was right by the window. They took the Switch, and all of the games that I had because I had it plugged into the charger right there under the window.
Oh, man, I'm so sorry.
Hey, I mean, honestly, I'm glad it was just the Switch and not the entire bookcase of cases of video games that I had or my Xbox One, my
Mhm.
PS3s that were sitting there. Like a Switch is fine. I can drop another $500 or whatever if I ever wanted to in the next lifetime or another. I wish they went on sale. I miss having a Switch.
No, I feel you. Yeah, with the Switch 2 coming out, I've been thinking through if I wanna make the move on it or not.
Honestly, I don't blame you if you do. I mean, it looks like especially with all the upresing and all that stuff. However, I have heard that there are some issues with like game libraries where you can only have it on one console now instead of having it across both.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun thing to figure out for yourself. But honestly, I'd say do it if you think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it will at some point. It's one of those things where, I like to wait, especially right now because it seems like really the only, big game that's out for it right now is, Mario Kart World, which is cool. I played it with a friend, um,
How is
but
it?
there's a lot to come. How is it?
Yeah,
It's cool. I think they gave it enough variety to stand out from Mario Kart 8.
enough variety.
Yeah, because how much variety can you give a racing game?
That's absolutely fair, you know. Um, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen that it's got an open world portion to it.
Mhm.
What is that like?
It's cool because so whenever you play through the 4 tracks with somebody or on your own, whatever,
Mhm.
you just keep driving. So you go through the 3 laps of your first track, and then you finish that race. The next
Right.
race starts on, like, an in-between section that connects the 2 tracks, and then it goes into 1 lap of the second one, and then you finish. And then it does the same for the 3rd and the same for the last, which is kinda cool.
That actually sounds real so like all of the races are within the map itself. It's not like a separate map from the actual courses.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely presented that way. And there's so many different avenues from each course that you can go. Like I saw, my friend, I can't remember what the mode is called, but you can choose the maps that you want to go to, and it'll give you
Oh,
the
that's
options
cool.
based on the roads in between.
That's cool. That is really
Yeah.
cool. I know that I had seen something on it having like knockout races, like what Need for
Yes.
Speed has. That's my only way of comparison of like you have to be at a certain place before you get knocked out of the race.
Yeah, totally. That mode is really fun.
Heck yeah. Are there any returners like Cheap Cheap or like Delfino Plaza?
Um,
Do you know
I don't
off the
know.
top of your head?
Yeah, I don't think so, but I
I
don't
was gonna
know.
say, having only the one experience, I know I'm asking you a lot of questions like you're a seasoned vet at it, but
I could
um,
look it up real quick.
go for it. Yeah, why don't we? While you're
Okay.
doing that, we'll go ahead and I'll start off the top three of like outside of Nintendo because, like I
Okay.
said, mine are very drastic. My number one, which is one that I've played front to back to front, many many times at this point. Unfortunately, they got rid of it from Game Pass, so I can't do it anymore unless I want to spend the money. Lies of P.
Ooh.
I yes, I am. I was never a Souls guy. I sucked absolutely when it came to Bloodborne and Dark Souls. And so I was like, this is just not my kind of game. The grinding until you finally beat a boss and having to restart at a waypoint and all that stuff. But I picked up Lies of P because I love retellings of old stories and seeing it involving Pinocchio in a
Yeah.
different kind of way. I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. Had no clue what it was going into it. Just thought, the story sounded cool. And it has got to be my number one game out of anything over all the
Wow.
years. Like, genuinely. Um, it's the story's so compelling to me. The boss fights are just hard enough to make you like want to get better at it, but not too hard as to be like, fuck this game, I'm never touching it again. Um,
Yeah.
I I ended up going through all three different storylines, finishing, going through as many different side quests as possible. I ended up going through a couple playthroughs, which just to prove my insanity as to how much I loved it. I went through a playthrough where the only waypoint I touched was the first one that you get and the one at the one at the hotel itself. So I
Okay.
literally went through the entire game of just because there are some that you have to touch to be able to like progress through.
Mhm.
Um and so when it came to those ones I would activate them. But like if I died at a boss that was like super far, I would just keep going until I got to that spot again. Like it genuinely was I want to make this as hard and as rewarding as possible for me. And I love the game. I'm so excited to get the DLC. I plan on picking it up as soon as I actually have money on a paycheck.
Yeah. That's a game that I haven't tried yet, but I've watched a bunch of people play it. I'm a big Souls-like guy, so I should give it a shot.
Could not recommend it enough. It is a Souls like um hard on the like
Okay.
because well because it has the aspects of a Souls game, but it is not nearly as difficult as the Dark
Okay.
Souls series is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Number two for me would have to be uh Alice Madness Returns.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if you've ever played the American McGee's Alice series. It's another one of those. I love retellings of old stories, the Alice in Wonderland, except in this one, she's gone mentally deranged, and you're
Okay.
kind of trying to work your way through her mind and unlocking memories as to what actually happened to her family because you find out through the first game, her whole entire family died in a fire, and she
Oh my
believes that
gosh.
it's her fault. And then you get through the second game and you find out that it's a completely different, like the actual thing that occurred is completely different than what you initially believed, and it's such a wild and out there story and it is an absolutely beautiful game in terms of graphics, the way they make the worlds look. American Mickey really actually hit it out of the park with that one, and I was so excited for the third game. Watching, I followed him on Patreon for a while, and he was posting all these different concept arts and everything as he was working his way through creating the story, and he brought it to EA. And I was so sad because what basically happened was they looked at all of his stuff and went, "This is fantastic," and then went, "But we're not going to let you make the game.
Oh,
We're just gonna shelf it. You know, we might end up having someone else make a third game for it or something. We might end up having use for the IP, but they basically were like, you can't have it." And so he stopped making video games because his passion project was no longer a possibility.
that's horrible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it really is a sad story, but that just makes the second game that much better because it's like you look at what a masterpiece it is and then look at what could have been. Because a lot of the stuff you can still find online if you look around. And it's just it's crazy to see what could have been, and it's honestly one of my top games because of that reason. Um, and then a less winded, but obvious third for me is the Banjo series, like
Okay.
Banjo Kazooie for me specifically because I loved the feeling of the retro feel to it. At this point I was 23, so this is only 4 maybe 5 years ago. um no, yeah, no, I would have been probably
Huh.
21, so it would have been 5 maybe 6 years ago. And I had just picked up my Xbox One X or One S, and I saw it on sale one day, and I was like, "Oh, this looks cool." Picked it up, ended up picking up all 3 games, and I've played through all 3. And Banjo Kazooie is just, for how it started, it's top tier for me.
I couldn't agree more. Do you know the whole history about how they left Nintendo?
Not at all, actually. I'm very curious as to that because I have the Rare Replay collection, and I know that it talks a little bit about it, but I haven't actually dove into like all the interviews with the devs on there.
Yeah. So I guess a summary back in the day, Rare was like pretty much a second party developer for Nintendo. Nintendo owned like 49% of their stake or something.
Hmm.
Um, but they would develop a lot of stuff with Nintendo's IPs. So they made the original Donkey Kong Country, and that's kind of what changed the scene for Rare because
Donkey.
they found a way to do to render 3D models in the 16-bit, interface, and that skyrocketed them. So they went on, of course, to Banjo Kazooie on N64, and then, they did GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and a lot of other awesome games. So they did Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, and then it was time for the GameCube, the next generation of consoles,
Right.
and things began to shift a lot. Rare wanted to expand more to other platforms, and Nintendo was kind of reluctant to invest further. So Rare was led to seek other buyers, and Microsoft came in, and I think it was 2002. They bought them for like 300 some million dollars,
Holy cow.
and it ended their partnership with Nintendo. So we never got a true Banjo 3. We got Nuts and Bolts instead, which it sounds like you think of that game fondly. I personally do not.
I have mixed feelings about it. I like it
Okay.
because I feel like it is still Banjo Kazooie in a sense of like they're making fun of themselves, but in a very playful way. Like especially the very start of
Uh-huh.
it where, Kazooie and Banjo are just very overweight from the fact of like their IP hasn't been touched in years.
Yeah.
And so like it's that nice little almost Conkers bad fur day playing on themselves. Um, and I enjoy that just because it's a fun little away from what it was. Um, and I will die on this hill. I don't think that the car mechanics were that bad.
Okay.
That's all you're gonna give me?
That's a thought,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm
I just I don't know. I feel like so with Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie was another one of like the very first games I have ever played.
okay.
So it might just be nostalgia goggles, but I just think there's such a stark contrast between how both games are played. Like I found myself when I was playing Nuts and Bolts wanting to not be in the car and play as Banjo and Kazooie, but the game actively deters you from doing that.
And I think that's why I like it the most is because of how far of a turn from what it is. I
Interesting.
love when games switch it up. Like, yes, the tried and true is always fun. There are games like, for example, Call of Duty. But even in Call of Duty, like they have, different publishers release different ones. Like some have, the old school dolphin diving, some have wall running, and some have, completely different shit altogether. But like
Hmm.
overall the core formula stays the same of it's just a shooter, and that's always fun. Being staying true to formula is always great and all, but there's some games that it's always just like I like it when they change it up. Like a game that I do remember fondly playing at one of my cousin's place was Super Mario Galaxy.
Hmm.
And going from, well, for me specifically, going from the side-scrolling Mario games to them playing a game where it's all 3D, you're running around, you're shooting yourself through these stars to worlds that, you're going in a full like circle around that little planet itself, you know what I'm talking about? Um
Yeah.
like that whole change up in itself was massive to me. And then even getting a Nintendo 64 and playing Mario 64 and going from these different worlds to then looking at how they changed that up to having Mario Galaxy. It's still the end of the Mario 64 formula, but it's just in a completely different way, being able to go different being able to do different things than you would have done in that game. It's that kind of experience of like changing the formula is why I think I like Nuts and Bolts so much, is that it stays very true in a sense of the going to different worlds, picking up different the jigsaw puzzle pieces and stuff, finding the little I'm never gonna remember their names at this point. The little different colored guys.
Oh,
There
Jinjos.
you go. Collecting jiggies and finding Jinjos. Like it still was a part of the experience of Nuts and Bolts from what I remember, but having the different aspect of having to use your car for a lot of things felt like a nice little refresh. And some people really hate you being, it sounds like one of them, the car mechanics. I felt like it was a nice little break from the same, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, so remind me, do Banjo and Kazooie have their moveset outside of the car?
That I couldn't tell you. It's been a minute since I played it.
I don't think they do.
I think they had some of the moveset, but I really think it went from having their full moveset to just being running around, jumping and collecting things, and a lot of their stuff
Hmm.
was based around the car.
Well, so to your point, I think where Mario continues to succeed in that regard is that formula of how Mario plays is still present despite having like a different mechanic. So like, every subsequent big 3D Mario game, Mario had Flood and Sunshine, Mario could do the spin in Galaxy, Mario has Cappy in Odyssey. They're all different mechanics that supplement the already, I'm going to say it, perfect moveset that Mario has.
I can agree with
Where I
you.
think Banjo doesn't excel at that is they took that away and completely changed it. You know what I mean?
I
And if you said you like that, so I can understand.
but I can also see it from that point of view of like that's why Mario is still around, is that it's stuck to that move set, and unfortunately
Hmm.
Rare is kind of I've I've heard bits and pieces, and I never know how true it is because it's always the internet. But I heard that Rare is trying to revive some of their IPs like that. And it'd be really cool to see if they were to actually go back to an old IP like Conquer or Banjo Kazooie and go back to that original form. Because while I do enjoy Nuts and Bolts, there's a reason why it's not my favorite one.
Right.
And I think you're right in the end because it while I do enjoy the straying away from the form that they had, I feel like I did have more fun playing the first two. And I would like to point out, even though you said we technically didn't get a Banjo 3, we did. I was doing a little research of this on the side. I know I said I wasn't going to do any research before we started the episode, but when I was getting prepared for us talking about everything, I didn't think Banjo-Kazooie was going to come up, and I had been watching some YouTube videos, and I ended up doing a little bit of a dive on this. Technically, Banjo-Tooie is Banjo 3E, but not in the way that you would think.
Coda, I know what you're about to mention. Please go ahead.
So, for
Because I had this
the
game.
original Game Boy Advance, there was a Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, I believe is what it was called,
Yes.
where it took place directly after the events of Banjo-Kazooie and between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, where it was I don't remember a lot of it because I did have it as well and I played it a little bit. I think I rented it from like a game exchange or something. But it was
Yeah.
you played through kind of the world of Banjo-Kazooie and collecting things and you were fighting you were going through the worlds, but it was technically a sequel to the initial game. It just wasn't on the initial console.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Oh my gosh.
It's yeah, a lot of people don't know about that game, I'm finding out, because even I didn't remember it a lot until I started watching this video on it, and it's just it's one of those things where it's like technically we did get a trilogy, even though it was kind of it's weird because you don't necessarily it's just like the and this is a horrible comparison, by the way. It's just like the Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts, I love to death. I would get into that in a different episode with you any day of the week if you ever wanted to. But because I just started playing Kingdom Hearts in my 20s. I had never got to play it on the initial PlayStation 2 or any of that stuff. So I'm learning about everything now as an adult, which is kind of crazy considering some of my friends have been playing it since they were kids, like some of them had the initial
Mhm.
original Kingdom Hearts. Anyways, there are sequels to the main numbered games that are on different consoles. And while the story is so convoluted, it doesn't necessarily matter. Someone's going to hate me for saying that. It doesn't
Oh boy.
necessarily yeah, exactly. It doesn't really, quote, unquote, "matter" that you play the ones that aren't on the mainline consoles. We're technically on, like even though we're waiting for Kingdom Hearts 4 to release, we're on, like, Kingdom Hearts 87 or something. If you include the mobile games, the handheld
Oh man.
games, the movies. Yeah, where it's crazy to think about, "Oh, yeah, we're only on the 4th Kingdom Hearts game they're releasing." No, we're on probably, like, the 12th or 13th.
That's wild. Coda, can I be honest with you?
Yes, sir.
Not that big a fan of Kingdom Hearts.
How dare you?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Honestly, it was one of those games where growing up, I was also kind of like a kid of like, "Oh, Disney?
Mhm.
Not really a fan." And, so I missed out on it, but playing them now as an adult, and I don't know how recently it has been since you played them, playing them now as an adult, I'm like, honestly, the stories someone's gonna hate me again for saying this, the story's kinda subpar to me. Like, I love
Whoa.
right, I know, very divisive statement. I love some of the twists and turns that are in it, But the story, if you take out the story, I do really enjoy the fighting in it. I enjoy the collecting of things and synthesizing different items and stuff. Like, I have put probably 100 hours into the first game just to make sure I got everything, didn't miss a single, interaction, a single drop or anything. And right now I'm finishing up Birth by Sleep. We're getting into the whole entire Kingdom Hearts thing in this episode. We'll have to save it for another one, but I
Yeah.
really do enjoy them now, and I feel like when's the last time that you played a Kingdom Hearts?
Um, it's been a while. Someone gifted me whenever they came out on Steam.
Mhm.
Anytime someone mentions Kingdom Hearts, all I can think about is that stupid picture of Mickey where he's in the dark hood and he's just like he's almost T-posing. You know what I'm talking about? He's just got that
Yeah,
big
I
smile.
know
He
exactly
looks so
what you're
stupid.
talking about. Uh, Unfortunately, I would ask you to do the voice because one thing that, I love that you can do is your many million voices, but I don't want us to get in trouble with any people over
Mm,
doing something like that.
Mr.
But,
Disney.
yeah, Mr. Walt himself. Speaking of, the voices and stuff and Disney, this is just a complete side note because my brain just thought about it, and every once in a while it runs through. Have you ever seen the Evanescence, like, but it's a parody of I think it's Wake Me Up, but it's goofy.
Yes. Yes, I have.
It runs through my head rent free. There will be times where I'm at work and I'm gonna go ahead and do it for us. Yeah, wake me up. Like, I'll I'll randomly just be at work singing that song. Um,
I love it.
Save me. Um,
Uh, it's
I
so
might
funny
keep
that
that in.
Banjo led you to Kingdom Hearts.
Right? Honestly, the way that PlayStation led me into Nintendo and Nintendo led me back into PlayStation is kind of wild. Knowing that they kind of were now that they were kind of a similar thing. Like, my experience was very different than a lot of kids.
Mhm.
Because I feel like, and I've talked about this with a few friends before, PlayStation was the rich person's console, even though it wasn't necessarily. Like, Nintendo was a lot more affordable because it was. I don't know if there was ever a real reasoning behind it, but like, you would find Nintendo consoles in a lot more households growing up. And I think that's kind of why my brain attributes it as to being a more rich console, because in a weird way it was like, oh, everyone has this. It's the it console, whether it was a GameCube or a Wii or having Game Boys and stuff, whereas PlayStation and Xbox always ended up being a little bit more on the higher end. Like, even now you're looking at probably a $700 console for a Switch or a Switch 2. I think it's 800. Forgive me, I don't know the proper numbers, but getting like a Series X console from Xbox is almost $900, almost a
Yeah.
grand. So it's like, in the end, PlayStation and Xbox have always been the more expensive console, but I remember my parents getting us PlayStation stuff. And so, where kids had Smash Bros, I had like Mortal Kombat,
Right.
which my parents really should have done a little bit of a better job at looking at the games that they were getting me. But that's neither here nor there. I remember playing at my uncle's place Grand Theft Auto 3 before I like ever even knew what, the R-rated themes in that game were. I was going into
Right.
strip club looking at pixelated, tatas and, oh, this is a cool game. Not knowing what I was looking at. Meanwhile, my mom pulled me out of watching the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck when my stepdad was showing me because of a strip club scene in it. So it's kind of weird
Oh
to
my
see the
gosh.
dichotomy on that. Yeah, but
Yeah, well, there's a lot of truth to the cost. I mean, when PS1 first came out, it was $100 more expensive than the N64.
That's crazy to me because when you look at, I mean, I guess it makes sense because when you look at the graphics, a lot of Nintendo 64 games hold up very well in comparison, but like for the time period, PlayStation I feel like had a lot better graphics. But not so much in the sense that $100 more would make sense, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Like I am very much in the case of like I don't turn on my PlayStation 1 because I like keeping it on a shelf and keeping it nice and clean.
Right.
But I do have a lot of the ROMs installed on my computer. And so going back and playing some of my childhood memories like Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. That game looks like shit. Like looking at it now, I'm like, I played this as a kid and I spent hours on it.
I mean, I would argue that with some N64 games too. I mean, some of the ways that they would implement textures, because it didn't have like it didn't have a real-time lighting engine at all.
Hmm.
Just because, the tech wasn't there, but
Right.
some of them just they all look like snot and dirt.
Give me an example. Give me an example of one.
So like Ocarina of Time, if you look at just like I think about the grass and the mountain textures, it just looks like a jumbled mess of green and brown. You know what I mean? And it was their way of trying to make it look a little bit more realistic.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before outside of the podcast. I've never played a Legend of Zelda game besides the Link's Awakening for the original Game Boy.
Oh, that's right. Well,
Yeah,
I think
I've never seen Ocarina of Time. I've never seen Majora's Mask. I know of these games, but
mhm.
my only experience is Link's Awakening DX, which was the colorized version.
Yeah.
Um, I played the ever loving shit out of that game. I loved it. But that is the only way that I know who Link is. Um, because like yeah, it just that was not one of those games that really had our attention.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think I grew up with Wind Waker, um, which I hold a special place in my heart. At the time, it kind of like threw people for a loop,
Which
just
one
because
was
it was
Wind
such a
Waker?
Wind Waker was, um, it was the one where Toon Link started, the very cartoony, saturated. It's the one where he's on a boat the majority of the time.
Okay, so I have seen bits and pieces of that. I've seen other streamers that I've watched before play that. A lot of
Yeah,
it's like spent out on the water. There's not really a whole lot of land to it, right?
yeah, totally. And I think what threw people off was I think at E3 they showed a tech demo of what the GameCube could do with its power and its graphics. And it was this
Hmm.
super realistic fight between Link and Ganondorf. And I think that is what eventually turned into Twilight Princess, the other Zelda game that came out on GameCube.
Okay.
But what released first was Wind Waker, and people were really upset about it as a result.
I can imagine going from having a very realistic looking fight to having it's a me, Link.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
um
stark contrast.
So let's dive into what is an IP that you would like to see a new game be released in or revived of some sort, because I can imagine there are some that haven't been touched in years. I can think of a couple specifically talking about Rare and like Banjo-Kazooie, that like they could use some love. They haven't been touched on aside from having them as cameos in Smash.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be really cool. So there is a game from the Super Nintendo called F-Zero. It's the game that Captain Falcon's from, if you know who that is.
Not a clue,
Um,
but I'll roll
ooh,
with it.
Captain Falcon was another character in Smash Bros. That I was like, who the heck is this?
Hmm.
But it's like a really fast-paced racing game that started on the Super Nintendo. And I think the last one that came out, it was F-Zero GX on the GameCube. I've never had the opportunity to play it, but I heard it was really good. They recently released a battle royale one. It was F-Zero 99 on the Switch, but
Okay.
it was pretty much the Super Nintendo one, except you played with 98 other people.
Okay.
So I think it would be cool if there was like a dedicated, um, kind of on the same wavelength of F-Zero GX where there's an actual story behind it and the characters interact with one another. That would be cool.
I was gonna actually say, yeah, like what kind of what kind of aspects to the game would it have? Would it have like a proper story? Having never played this before, I'm assuming the original F-Zero was literally just kind of like those old drive as far as you can without getting hit kind of situations, or is it completely different from that?
That was part of it. It was a 5 lap race, and it was super fast paced. It did the kind of like how the original Mario Kart was. It had that weird 3D effect that the Super Nintendo
Okay.
had.
Yeah.
Um, there was like a boosting system, and you could crash out and bump into people, so you had to be careful. There was like a gliding system where if you went over ramps, you went super fast. It was really cool.
Okay. That's pretty neat. I'll
Yeah.
have to actually give that a check. I'll have to give that a look because in my mind, what I'm thinking of are I don't know the name off the top of my head of them, but I think one of them's Outlaw something or other, where it's literally just you're staring at basically a background and the car just keeps going and going, and the only reason that the game is over is you run into like a car or something. If you know the games I'm talking about,
Are you talking about Desert Bus?
maybe.
Oh my
Maybe
gosh.
like I'm thinking of like old like the plug and play games of like
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about where it's like it's literally just like this background of a city or something and you've got this car sitting in the middle of the road and the track comes at you but you're moving back and forth across the road and you have to try and overtake these other cars and your points get higher the further you go until you either run out of gas because you don't hit a checkpoint in time or you hit a car and it stops you in your tracks or
oh,
something like that.
yeah,
Do you
yeah. I hear you.
does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
That's what I'm
Do
seeing in
you
my
know what
brain.
do you know what Desert Bus is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Desert Bus is I'm gonna say it's a joke game, pretty much. There are these two famous magicians, Penn and Teller. I don't know if you know them,
Uh-huh.
but they made like a game collection for some Sega console, I think. Don't quote me on that. But one of the games that were on it was Desert Bus, and the point behind it was to make it like as real as possible. So you are on this desert bus driving for 8 hours to the destination, and then 8 hours back, and that's how you get a single point.
And then Teller's Smoke and Mirrors.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. This is not what I was thinking of, but in a similar vein to it. Yeah, no, let me pull up I'm just gonna while we're talking about this, go ahead. What kind of story or what's the story of F-Zero while I'm looking this up? Because I do want to learn about this.
The story, like the
Like,
lore behind
what
it.
is lore behind it, or like you said that the one for the GameCube had an actual story to it. Like, what is F-Zero and all of these other things? Because I've never heard of Captain Falcon in my life, unless
Yeah,
you're talking
yeah.
about like the only thing that I could think of was Blue Falcon.
Same
That
sort of thing. It's so I think the game itself was kind of like it was meant to show off what was it called? Mode 7, that's what it was called. It was Nintendo's special graphics chip in the Super Nintendo. But it was able to simulate 3D environments. The thing with F-Zero was that it was like a futuristic sci-fi world, and Captain Falcon himself was a bounty hunter. And
Mhm.
part of that story involves him racing against these alien people. But yeah, it had like super vibrant tracks, and aside from Captain Falcon, it had a bunch of characters that nobody's ever heard of. But for whatever reason, that game was popular enough for him to be in the first Smash and every other Smash since then, pretty much.
That is actually that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, as I'm looking this up right now, I'm not remembering the name and I'm hating it, but it's like a highway overtake game that I'm thinking of. Like very arcade cabinet, maybe probably on the um SNES or like
Mm.
on the Famicom or something like that, where it's literally like it's The one that I'm remembering specifically is from like an old plug and play of like you're driving what looks like a halfway devil cross between a Lamborghini and a Ferrari, and it's very like vaporwave vibes in the background of like this Miami skyline, and it's literally just the car stays in place in the middle of the screen. And what you do is you start the race, you're speeding down, the track's coming at you, there's curves and stuff, palm trees passing by, and you have to get to these certain checkpoints in order to keep going. And you have like a timer in the top. If that timer runs out, your car kind of like skids off the side of the road and
Okay.
you stop there.
Is it kind of like pole position?
Maybe?
That was more of a like a traditional that was the Namco version of that, it sounds like.
Yeah, pole position. Yes, yes. So pole position is actually yes, 100%. Very
Okay.
in the same vein. That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry, my brain broke trying to think of the
No,
words,
okay.
but yeah, very much that game, but in a sense of like meant for arcades of like having that time limit and stuff, and less of like the because from what I remember of pole position, now that I'm looking at it, it was a lot more of like a time trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was more of like a go as far as you can until like you crash out.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
God, if I had to think of a game that I would love to see come back from my very limited knowledge of Nintendo games, I would like to see. Let me pull up some game. Let me pull up the list of their IPs because there's some that are just not coming to my brain that are like older 16-bit and 32-bit games that I do
Mhm.
remember playing because that is a lot more in my vein. Like what was the name of it? Ghouls and Goblins or something like that. I know that they had done a remake of it.
Oh, yes.
What
Very hard game.
what was the one? Sorry, we're going. I'm pulling up.
Do you remember pieces
I'm
of it?
pulling up the Wikipedia page to see what they have here.
Okay.
Because there are some names in here that I'm not recognizing at all.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't even get into Metroid, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's kinda I'm not very versed in Metroid, if I'm gonna be honest
Okay,
with
that's
you.
fair.
I think the extent of my Metroid knowledge is Smash Bros.
That's fair. Honestly, one that I think I would love to see them bring back is like this is gonna sound really stupid. Um the like Big Brain Academy stuff from like the original DS.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember when I first got a Nintendo DS, we had two of the Big Brain Academy games for it, and I used to play those all the time when I was outside of school. Like I said, didn't have a whole lot of friends, but I loved learning and I loved increasing my knowledge, and I would always run and give it to my mom and be like, "Look, mom, look at my brain age. Look at like I'm showing how experienced I am," and she was like, "Oh, that's fantastic, honey." But I remember excelling, and it's probably the reason why I have such a deep love for like crossword puzzles and the pick cross or whatever it's called, where you're like doing the hatchings of this row has this many things filled in, and those kind of games, like the brain puzzles, is because of how much I spent doing those. And it looks like the last game that they had released was 2021, which is, it's really not that long ago, but like it'd be cool to have another one, especially for like the Switch 2 coming out, like having a full, I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to see.
Yeah. Can I change my answer?
Yeah, go for it. Are you gonna say
No, because
the
like,
Big Brain Academy too?
no, you mentioned the DS, and I'm like, I had a brain blast. A game that I think I want to come back more than anything is Scribblenauts.
Oh my god, Scribblenauts. Honestly,
Yes.
they did a disservice to themselves when they did and I wholeheartedly believe this. They did a disservice whenever they made the one that was like Scribblenauts in the DC or whatever, because
Yeah, I agree.
as much as I did enjoy like the original Scribblenauts game, um that one was just very almost like a cash grab to me. Like
Mhm.
The levels weren't fun. All you had to do was create like one of the many DC characters, and you could instantly solve 90% of the puzzles. Like if you picked Superman, or like if you put
Oh,
indestructible cyborg or something like that. Like if you gave it any amount of adjectives, you could literally solve all of the puzzles with half of those characters. And I ended up 100%ing it on Xbox, getting all the achievements, because literally at the end, all I had was, create one version of this character, or create one version of this character. And so I literally went down the list of all the names: Aquaman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman,
mhm.
all of these characters. And it wasn't nearly as fun as the first one. The first one really made you have to like think and give a proper like answer, or you had to actually solve it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I never played the original. I had the sequel, Super Scribblenauts, where you could add adjectives.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think unlike the unmasked version, despite giving you that pretty much unlimited creativity aspect of adding adjectives, you still had to be a little bit more clever with what you added onto objects. And I think games like that, being a creative person, I really latched onto those. You know what I mean? I think being able to use my brain in a creative way was a thing that I searched for in games when I was a child.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Another game in the similar vein, not changing my answer from Big Brain Academy, but another one that would just be kind of cool, in the similar vein to the Scribblenauts, Drawn to Life.
Yes, Coda, yes.
Because the one that I remember playing the most out of was the Drawn to Life SpongeBob game.
There was a SpongeBob one?
There was a SpongeBob one. Hold on, look this up because it is
Yeah.
amazing. And I want to play it at some point on the computer through a ROM, because I do have plans to get like a drawing pad, and it'd be cool to actually be able to use the drawing pad, because I think it was on the DS.
Yeah.
Um
This is crazy.
yeah, right? SpongeBob. Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a whole entire like, yeah, involving Frankendoodle, the Nihoi Minoi.
Oh, Doodle Bob?
Yeah, Doodle Bob.
Yes. Oh, that is so
Yeah,
cool.
it's a whole game based on having to save the world from Doodle Bob. Doodle Bob steals Patrick's pencil, runs off to downtown, and you as the character have to like create all these things and like make your way through. Like you draw your own version of what a karate chop would be, and like, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. I haven't thought about that game in a while. I played the original one and it was such a blast.
Oh yeah. The last one that they released was in 2020 for the Switch, iOS, Android, and Microsoft Windows, it says. It was called Drawn to Life Two Realms. But they had a total of 4 games, it looks like.
Yeah, I've never seen Two Realms. I might have to,
I don't think I
if
ever
it's for
saw Two
Switch, I
Realms.
might have to look for that.
Yeah. It's yeah, right here. Drawn to Life Two Realms.
A pixel-inspired isometric view. Ooh, okay.
Sounds like it's right up your alley.
Uh-huh.
But all that being said, this has been a fantastic first episode. I really have enjoyed all of our conversations. I think this has gone very well. Any editing that I'm going to have to do is probably going to be minimal at best. I might not even pull any of this out, aside from maybe our long pauses and looking up stuff. But what? My brain just broke for a second. Um, if you could give any advice to someone who hasn't really had experience with Nintendo, what would that be? Like, where would you suggest someone like that starts? Um,
Ooh, I don't even know if I can say that publicly.
in your personal opinion, fuck the public view. Where would you recommend is your all-time like, this is a game I suggest playing if you've never touched it? Aside from
Mm.
the obvious Kirby Air Ride, because we've already established once we figure out how Link Play works, we're absolutely going to be doing some multiplayer on that city. Give me the answer here. Help me.
City Trial.
City Trial. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that if you have a retro game store in your area,
Mhm.
find a way honestly, find a way to legally obtain these games because they're a cool thing to collect, but having that physical media, I think, really it makes you appreciate those things a little bit
Oh,
more.
100%. I've been looking around and there's some that like there's one that is like 30 minutes east of me. Sorry, I had to actually do
Mhm.
the whole like cardinal directions thing in my
Yeah.
brain. Yeah, there's one that's like 30 minutes east of me that actually has quite a bit of old memorabilia, and I've been looking at them for collecting some PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 stuff, but I'll definitely have to check it out
Yeah.
because the only I'm very sad about it. The only two that have managed to survive from my travels is Mario 64 and Earthworm Jim 3D.
Ooh,
Um,
okay.
those are the only two like cartridges that have managed to survive my moves. I used to have like the Star Wars Pod Racer and Shadow of the Empire and a couple of other ones. Unfortunately, those ones didn't end up surviving. A couple of them got damaged and a couple of them just kind of got lost in the move. They might be in boxes in like my old storage unit back home, but I've definitely been looking at them for collecting and I yeah, it'll be nice to have that physical media.
Yeah, totally. I think if you don't want to face the iron hammer of Nintendo for emulating, if you have a Switch and you get Nintendo Online, I think it's $20 for a year. It's pretty affordable compared to the other systems online programs.
For sure.
Uh, but if you get that, you have access to a huge library of Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo games.
It it really is a shame. One of the last things that I will say is it really is a shame that they have to throw the hammer down so hard. I understand their
Right.
reasoning behind it. I respect it, but I also feel like a lot of these are lost art forms at this point when you look at it in a true blue sense of like there are games that just no longer exist in any physical form because whether or not it got destroyed or they just stopped making it. And a lot of their games, there are some real gems in there that I feel like if they were to be more open to having them online, it would do wonders for their company because
Oh, absolutely.
they have games. They have a very limited I don't know how much it's expanded in the recent years, but they have a very limited amount of games on the Nintendo Online from what I've seen that you can
Hmm.
emulate. It's nowhere near their full library. But it's just some of these games could really use a revival, and I feel like allowing people to play them in any way without fear of that their wrath coming down upon you. I feel like it would do them some good. I know that there are some companies, I don't want to name any of them because I don't want to be wrong about it, but I know that I've read in recent years that there are a lot of like game companies that are like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." Like, you know, while we would rather you buy our copies, we understand. Like there even specifically some developers I know that there are people who will release their games on Steam now, and they'll also be like, I understand you can't necessarily afford the full price of a game, so here's a full copy of it that you can just download from my site. If you want to tip me, you can. And those are the developers that I think are like really cool for kind of understanding where the world is at now.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, this was a fantastic first episode. I can't thank you enough for everything. Any last words for the podcast?
No, just thank you for having me, Code. I had a blast talking about Nintendo.
Absolutely. Go ahead and actually go ahead and plug your plug all your stuff for me. Where can people find you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on most things. I'm on Twitch, TikTok, YouTube. It's all the same thing, The Cubic Guru. Uh, but yeah, I appreciate that.
That is TheCubicGuru, no spaces. Definitely go check him out, give him a follow, watch his streams. You know, he is a fantastic guy. He's a very funny guy. He does a lot of voices on stream, and anytime there's a game that doesn't have voice acting in it, he will absolutely fill in the characters, and he does a fantastic job.
Thank
Side
you.
note, if there's anyone out there who is like looking for voice actors for a video game or anything, get this man now.
Oh my
He is
gosh.
when I kid you not, this man has a million voices like in that back pocket of his. He is talented beyond talented. But yeah, next week we are going to be live with Vivavixey, another one of my friends. She's a fantastic artist. I don't know if you know her, QB,
Yeah, I've heard the name.
but yeah, she's a wonderful person. We're actually going to be going over FNAF in the world of mascot horror games because I asked her what topics she wanted to talk about, and she said that she could go on forever on that. If you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and send them to the email, which is scuffedasfuckpod@gmail.com. That is SCUFFEDAFPOD@gmail.com. You can also drop them on any posts that I do on YouTube or Blue Sky. But thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.